Hey, how you doing? We are live here. Hey, Lee, how you doing?
I can't believe another month's gone by already. I'm ready.
Hey, we are great. And look, Lee, we got somebody sitting in the middle of us. This is Karen Jefferson. We'll
Yeah,
give
she
some
should be
introductions,
in
but
here.
say hi to everybody, Karen.
Hello, everyone. I am happy to be here in the middle between these two greats.
All right. Well, look, here's the deal, right? Today we're talking about the rise of fractional project managers. Is this the future of PM careers? Now, let me give you an introduction to who we have on the panel today, right? So, first and foremost, let's jump in. Let's talk about Karen here for a moment. Karen is the senior project management consultant with over a decade of independent consulting experience with large scale workday implementations across the US and internationally. She was actually telling me a little while ago about working with a company down the street from me, right, that does eyewear and lens type stuff. And I said, wait a minute, I didn't even know that they did. I thought they was a chemical company. I didn't know what they did. But she was telling me about that. So she knows her stuff, right? So she provides strategic contract PM services to global enterprise clients. And then she offers corporate and project leadership. She got those roots working at companies like BNSF, Railway, Frito-Lay, has a dual master's degrees, right? A PMP, been a PMP for a while now. You even a certified Scrum Master since like 2012, right? So Karen is out there doing great and wonderful things. So welcome, Karen. So we are looking forward to having this conversation with you, right? Then I have Mr. Lambert here, Lee Lambert. Hey, what can I say about Lee? He's trained over 50,000 people. He is the last remaining founder of the PMP. Lee is just great. Got a master's in project management from George Washington University. And one of the things that we've talked about before is that 18-month project that was turned down, that was cut in half, down from 3 years. So Lee is here, and Lee has a brand and land shirt on, I believe, but we'll talk about that stuff in just a moment. And then last but not least, you have me. I'm here. I'm just here in the back door. I'm here trying to back these folks up with all their greatness. I'm a certified Scrum trainer, PMP. I'm in school to get my PhD in industrial organizational psychology. And I've just been around Scrum and Agile for a long time, right? So I've had that PMP since 2005 and that CSM since the same thing. So we're gonna have a good conversation here, and really jump and talk a lot of just about a lot of great things, right? And so here's the deal. Before we jump in and jump on and start talking, I want to give Lee the floor because I need Lee to tell me about his shirt and tell who's in the background and supporting us. So tell us a little bit about John and the Brandon Land crew there.
Yeah, I think everybody's getting to know John pretty well by now. He's this Brandon Land thing. I thought it was just a passing fad, but my gosh, I've done over 30 of them already, and I learn something every time I go. So he just he's an executive for some banking organization, but he really gets his thrills out of Brandon Land, helping people land their next big opportunity. So he's quite a guy. I've really enjoyed getting to know John.
Now, the reason why I bring John up is because John is the fourth member of this crew today, right? John is always here in the background because he just does not want to get on the camera for some strange reason. However, I have forced him that next month he's going to at least give me a blurb to kind of put up there so we can introduce him properly. So I've kind of forced him into that one. I can't force him on the camera yet, but I'm really going to get him to at least give us a blurb about himself. So
Good,
that's a
that's
good
good.
thing. All right, so let's get right into it, y'all. Let's get right into it. So we have a very first question here, and I'm going to throw that up on the screen for us. What exactly is a fractional project manager? You know, Karen, I'm going to let you be the first up the bat here. How about you tell us what is a fractional project manager? Give us some understanding.
All right. Well, first of all, a fractional project manager is a whole person. So let's just clear that up first. So that whole person. But basically, a fractional project manager is generally contract based, can
Mhm.
be independent, could work for a sourcing firm or consultant firm, but they
Mhm.
lead multiple projects. You're leading projects part time or project specific across multiple clients, multiple
Mhm.
business units. But unlike a full time PM, they offer flexible, on demand expertise without that long term commitment. And
Mhm.
clients like this, particularly those organizations that They may or may not have the skills in house. It's for a
Hmm.
project, so they don't want to hire full time,
Yeah.
and then have be oversourced.
Hmm.
So being able to bring somebody in just for what they need, whether it's a 50% availability,
Hmm.
75%, or even if it's a small project where they just need somebody a few hours of the week. And because of that, then you're generally working across multiple projects and multiple clients.
Great, great, great. So, Lee, you got any thoughts on this?
Oh yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on that. I think in a way, to tell you the truth, I think we work fractionalize it within a corporation because in a matrix environment, you're bouncing around from job to job, so there's a
Hmm.
lot of similarity.
Hmm.
But I think the main difference is you can be a little bit more selective as an employee, as a contractor, in what jobs you accept. You're not forced to take whatever's offered to you. You can look around until you find one you feel comfortable with. So I think there's a lot of advantages to it. I like the idea. I've never, frankly, been a fractionalized PM. I always had a full time job, so there were times I wished I didn't, but the fact of the matter
Hmm.
was, I think there's some real opportunities, and I do think it's the future. I think we're going to see more and more of this as we go into it.
Yeah, I agree with both of you all in terms of that. If I think about fractional work, period, I always do fractional work, especially since I started this PhD journey. Maybe working 10 hours a week at this organization and then another organization working 5 hours a week. And the truth of the matter is, I think what both of you all said is really important because as a fractional PM, it gives you control. As an organization, it gives you some other things like you don't have to deal with that kind of resource on your books, right? They leave, you got to pay, all kinds of extra stuff when they leave. And as a person that owns a company, it's really hard when people leave and start going to get unemployment on you and everything else. So it just adds a whole bunch of other things that you just really don't have to deal with as an actual employer. But as a person, as an individual, do I think this is the way to go for the future? I mean, I think we're in a gig economy, right? And being in the gig economy, I think people are really taking pieces of work and putting together whatever they can to make it all work for them, for their
Mhm.
situation. And COVID helped to give people a whole ton of power in terms of how they're deciding to lead their lives and their futures. So I think this whole thing related to fractional project management is really important. I remember I started seeing recently several people on LinkedIn really calls themselves actual fractional project managers. In the past 2 years, I've seen a rise in that. And so, what else have you all seen in terms of on LinkedIn or in the spaces that you're in? Karen, any thoughts?
The thing I've seen, and not so much on LinkedIn, but what really changed for me and for peers that I work with is when we went through the pandemic. It used to be we had to get on a plane, we had to fly to where the client was, and
Hmm.
you had to be there. Well, when we proved that we could do these projects virtually, that really opened the door
Yeah.
for you could have multiple projects, multiple clients, and because you're in one place and
Hmm.
you're doing it all via technology. So for after that, I saw it really step up. It used to be I would have one client at a time, but
Yeah.
after that, definitely multiple clients.
Yeah, and I don't see any reason why you wouldn't have multiple clients at this point so you can have enough work and make enough money to be able to take care of your family. Seriously, right? I know this is newish to you, Lee, but any other thoughts in terms of that whole process of what you've seen in terms of fractional project management?
Yeah, I think what's happened is the fractional project manager has suddenly realized that he or she has some control of their own destiny. That they don't have to be obligated to an organization. They've got a skill set that people need and that they can sell. Now they don't make the same amount of
Hmm.
money. It's about 40% less because of benefits and that sort of thing. But the fact of the matter is, you can be very selective in what you
Hmm.
decide to do. You don't have to do the things you have to do. You do the things you want to do, and I think that's one of the big benefits for fractional. project management is that you can be very picky. If you're good, especially, I mean, if you're really well established,
Yeah.
you're going to be a man. You're going to have more work than you want to do.
Yeah. Karen,
That's
what I heard,
absolutely right.
go ahead,
Yeah,
Karen.
that's exactly what I've enjoyed about it is you can work as much or little as you want depending on your personal situation. So if there are
Hmm.
times where you have other things going on and you only want to take, a few
Hmm.
hours a week, or if you're just really feeling, or you have some financial goals or something you want to make and you don't mind working 60, 70 hours a week, then go do that. As long as you're giving all of your clients the best of yourself, though.
Yeah, I agree with that. And here's the thing that I heard Lee say, Karen, and I got to let you know this. He said if you're not a good project manager, you're gonna suck and you ain't gonna really have a job out here. That's what Lee just said. So
Yeah.
you had Lee slid that one in on us. So that means, Karen, you got to be good at what you do because folks like me, obviously, I can't keep going with this work. So we're going to figure it out. All right, Lee. So the next one is going to be up for you in terms of the questions, right? So the next question is why are companies turning to fractional PMs instead of hiring full time folks? What do you think?
Well, I think that's why I think it's going to continue to be that way. Uh, New employees cost a lot of money. There's startup
Yeah.
costs. There's startup learning curve they have to go through. If I can get a senior level person to come in and hit the deck running, the minute they get there, they start producing. Then
Hmm.
I've done a real service in that regard. Now, the counter to that, of course, you get stuck with a bad hire, and you're stuck with a bad hire
Hmm.
until things really get messy. So it's really works for both sides. I don't see how it could not be a win-win situation unless you don't have the skill set. If you don't have the marketable skill set,
Yeah.
then you're probably working for a company.
Yeah, I agree with that. What do you think, Karen?
One thing I will add, because generally my projects, I am working for the client, not the technical implementer. So I'm handling the budget a lot of the times as well.
Hmm.
One of the things that the client has to take into consideration is a lot of these consultants can be very expensive. So, in the short term, it can be very expensive, and it might be less if you have a lot of projects and ongoing
Hmm.
projects to bring in a full time employee. But if it's something with a beginning and an end, and you're not going to do another major project until a year or so from now, and financially it's a better option.
Yeah, and I agree with that because one of the things is that if your skill is truly, you're really a great specialist at project management and you really know that inside and out, you don't need to know many of the other things. I mean, you don't need to know the domain in particular in order to do that great PM work, right? And so if you bring in a sharpshooter to take care of things that have definite beginnings and endings, and you know that you're only going to spend so much money because you're not going to be doing tons of overtime, it's definitely a win for the organization because you get somebody to bring in an amazing skill. And here's the thing that I would add to that that's really interesting is globalization, right? I mean, when you have this virtual world and now you're grabbing fractional PMs, you can grab them from any place on the planet. Like if they know how to do the job, right? As long as they can do the job and do the job well, you really can, you got the world open to you. It's like a whole sea of applicants at that point that you didn't have available to you when you only could hire people that walk into the door and you were trying to have to just go through all that process of trying to figure out what's the right resource at the right time. So I think all those things are correct. I mean, I don't know what else to add to that because organizations, they got to do what's in their best interest, right? And most of them, they got to think about how much money they're spending and what they're doing. So I agree
But
with that.
I think you hit on a very important point, Devon. It a real project manager. I've always said a project manager is a project manager is a project manager.
Hmm.
And I did a student group over the weekend, and one of the questions that came up to me from one of these students was, "Do I have to have a specific technical skill to be a project manager?" And
Yeah.
my response has always been, "No. You give me any kind of project, I can manage it. I don't need
Hmm.
to know all the answers, but I need to go know where to go get them." but I can manage any kind of project.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think it's just one of those things that over the years, I think that there's always been this tie, the technical skills or domain related skills, whatever those other skills are that's beyond PM skills is also needed. But some organizations do ask for other skills in project managers, trying to get project managers to write requirements and do all kinds of other things that may not be their forte or dive deep into architecture. Those things do happen, but we're talking purely PM skills here, right? So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, so then here's the deal. We got more questions here, that's for sure. So, Karen, this next one will be up for you, right? And that next question is going to be, how do the responsibilities of a fractional PM compare to a full-time PM? What's your thoughts on that, Karen?
From a scope standpoint, from what it is I do, it's absolutely the same. You're still responsible for making sure that you're planning and executing that project as
Hmm.
successfully as possible. So whether you're fractional or full time, your responsibilities are identical. Now, what is different for a fractional PM is you're expected to deliver fast.
Hmm.
Have less context and time. Oftentimes, you're not brought in at the beginning of the project. Sometimes you're brought in because of a crisis. Either the
Hmm.
PM that they had didn't work out, or something happened and they had to move on. So, when you're brought into those crisis situations, you're expected to hit the ground running. And I always say, bring your toolkit. You're expected to have experience, so bring
Hmm.
that toolkit of past experiences, samples, examples, templates, anything that's going to help to make you faster and to get you in there hitting that ground running. You're expected to be self-directed and just be immediately effective.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, I
What's your thoughts on
agree
that?
about that. I think that there's not that much difference in the responsibility. I mean, fundamentally, we want to do a good job. Now, that's whether we're working for a company or working as a contractor.
Mhm.
If we don't do a good job, we won't have work very long. So I think
Hmm.
there's a lot of similarities in regards to what that relationship looks like. It gives me a little bit more freedom as a contractor to come and go as I, sometimes you get to work for a boss that's not so fun to work for. Well, and fractional gut, you just say bye bye and go find something else. You don't have that freedom as much when you're an employee.
Yeah. I agree with that. And the only difference, I mean, I agree because I don't see any difference between the two roles from the job that's being done. The job is the job is the job. As Lee said earlier, a PM is a PM is a PM, right? And so I don't think that that changes at all. The only thing to me that changes is you're likely a contractor. And if you're a contractor, you just don't have the same access to politics and, going to team meetings and celebrations that happen and town halls and all that other stuff. But I think any normal contractor wouldn't have access to that. So if you're on contract as a fractional PM, I guess you could be a part-time employee and be a fractional PM too. But I think most of the time it's going to be a contract, and I think it's only you're just a contractor. I think that's the only real difference because I don't understand why a person would hire a sharpshooter that couldn't come in and just really run and execute, right? But the
Mhm.
truth of the matter is, I think that organizations expect full-time PMs to run and execute. I mean, if you're not running and executing as a full-time PM, as Lee say, you're not going to be around very long unless they pity you in some
No,
kind of
that's
way,
right.
right? So it just we don't see any difference there, right? If you all out there in the comments, if you think that there's a big difference between fractional PMs and full-time PMs, let us know. I mean, you may have done both of the roles, right, before in your life. I know we have here, and we don't see no real difference because the objective is to execute and get things done. Now that takes us to our next question. Okay. And so here's the question here, and that is how can a traditional PM transition to fractional work? Lee, what do you think about that? You've owned businesses and
Yeah,
companies. What do you think about
an
that?
easy one for me. I think the key to that working is your network that you establish.
Yeah, I
Because
agree
as
with
a
you. Yeah.
fractional PM, you got to know who to call and when to call them. And you've got to make your reputation and then build that network. That's why I have 100,000 LinkedIn connections. If I need something, within 2 calls, I got it. And I think it's the same thing for work, for actual work. The only time I've ever been unemployed, I was let go on a Friday and started a new job on a Monday. Took 2 phone calls over the weekend, started a new job. Well, if you don't network like that, you're out there hunting. You're out there along with everybody else. So
Yeah.
build that network, then go ahead and polish your skills.
Now, Karen, for the people who are not Lee Lambert, who have 100,000 people in their network, right? Because the rest of us are not Lee, right? What do you think about that?
It is exactly as Lee said, though. It is all about the network and staying in touch with people. From one
Hmm.
project to the other, you really have to stay in touch and not, you're not just, reaching out when you need something. Every now and then you'll see somebody on LinkedIn from an old project, reaching out, congratulating them, so that you
Hmm.
stay top of mind, so that when
Hmm.
something does come up that they need, they remember, oh, Karen did this 3 years ago. I'm going to give her a call. So network it, especially if you're independent and not working for a sourcing or consulting firm. It is
Hmm.
all about the network.
Yeah, I agree with that. The only thing that I would add to it is, for me, if you're going to fractional work, just make sure that all your other ducks are in a row in terms of your family life, your money, because you could end up in a situation where, regardless of your network, you may not find an opportunity tomorrow. Right, over the
Hmm.
weekend, right? And so you need to make sure that your family is okay. You need to make sure that you have enough money saved so then you are good to go for those dry periods. Because if you've been around consulting, you've had a dry period or two. And if you had a dry period, you have some money to buffer you. That's going to always be helpful. If you're just getting started, I think there are opportunities that exist out there, right? I think people advertise for those opportunities. I've had people reach out to me talking about offering me fractional PM services. So people are chasing down and trying to build their fractional network to some degree. And I definitely would say to do that, but just make sure you got your other ducks in a row. If you don't do that, then you'll end up in a rough situation, right? I've been in situations where I didn't get paid for 120 days, right? 30 days, 90 days, and sometimes you're turning around an invoice in 30 days and it takes another 30 days to get paid. So you just want to make sure that you are lined up in a way that is going to be safe for you and your family, and works best for your situation, right? And I would do that for any contract whatsoever, not just being a fractional PM. Okay. So that
Well,
is
that's
one.
I think that's one of the reasons some people aren't fractional because they
Yeah.
don't dare take that step. That's a big step
Yeah.
to get that safety net out from under you. Now you're on your
Mhm.
own out there. So I think a
Yeah.
lot of people that would like to be fractional don't dare
Hmm.
take that step.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Devon, I would almost say it again for the folks in the back because it may look, exciting and it is, and, there's money to be made in it. But you also really have to think about your family
Hmm.
situation and the cost. Healthcare benefits right now, if you don't plan for that and
Hmm.
save for that, because
Hmm.
now you're responsible for your destiny and that of your family. So you really have to take all of that into consideration before you jump out there.
Yeah. And then I would add to that, that some of us get into these nice, fat, cushy, fractional opportunities, right? And then we don't do? We don't do the business development because we're in a cushy fractional opportunity. So now you're not looking for that next opportunity while you're in the current opportunity. So when this opportunity all of a sudden ends, now you're stuck like Chuck.
Yeah,
So you don't want to be
yeah.
in that situation either. So you're just always in a situation where you have and you're chasing and you have and you're chasing. And some people it's just not in them. And that's okay. Stay at your job, stay cushy, do what you need to do. But if you're not willing to have it and chase, have it and reach out, have it and continue building that network, have it and continue being in touch, life is gonna suck for you sooner or later. You can't say that we didn't warn you here because we throwing warnings all over the place, right? So if you're not listening, that's on you. That's not on me. Because we all been in that situation where the opportunities just aren't coming around tomorrow, right? It just is what it is, right? And just don't think that it's all roses on this
Exactly.
side. It really isn't. There is some thorns there, and you need to be prepared for the thorns, is the best thing they can tell you. And if you're not, hey man, just come here and we'll listen to you. Type something in the chat. We'll say we feel bad for you, and we'll leave it at that. But we're not going to feed you.
We'll give you some sympathy.
Yeah, we'll give you some sympathy. That's all we're gonna do, Lee. We're not gonna go beyond the sympathy. That's all we're gonna give you some sympathy, and we're gonna say, at least I'm gonna say, just so I'm not mean, I'm gonna say it in my head. I'm not gonna say it out loud. I'm gonna say I told you so. That's exactly what I'm gonna say. But I'm not gonna say it out loud. But I'm gonna look like, yeah, whatever. All right, so we have a few more questions here. So let's go ahead and move on to question number five here. And I'm going with odds being all about Karen. And so this is the odd number here, right here with question number five. So I'll ask it, right? How do fractional PMs handle multiple clients on projects? What do you think, Karen?
You have to be a master of time management and scheduling. The
Yeah.
I generally try to keep the number of clients I have to a smaller number, but even with that, you really have to have those scheduling
Yeah.
skills and tools, and even if it gets down to using colors and alerts on your calendars, booking
Hmm.
yourself out for different clients, so that and sync and manage those multiple calendars, because oftentimes we're on the client's calendar. So now
Hmm.
you've got 3 or 4 calendars that you have to manage to. So you really have to rely on time blocking and be really good at your communications, following up with,
Hmm.
your emails across clients, those kinds of things. So
Yeah.
use those tools. Whatever tools you have, there are lots out there that will help with that. Things
Hmm.
like ClickUp, Notion, Trello, Loom, or just old fashioned, merging of calendars, those kinds of things on your phones. Whatever
Hmm.
works for you, do it so that you can just really be on top of those multiple calendars.
Yeah, I agree with that. Any thoughts on that, Lee?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I like to talk about with this is I think as a fractional PM, you still have a responsibility to integrate with the strategy of the organization. I think that's going to help you do
Hmm.
your time. It's going to help you understand how much flexibility on any one task you might have. And
Hmm.
if you don't do that, you may not get around to it all. So I think the strategy still becomes, even though you're not an employee, you're a
Hmm.
contractor. That strategy still drives what you're doing.
Yeah, I agree with that. And what I would add, and the thing that I think that probably is most important for me is being proactive. You know, time management is absolutely important, but I really think you need to be way more proactive than reactive. I think people get stuck in reacting. And once you find yourself constantly reacting, I mean, outside of emergencies, then you will find that you have many, many problems at that point. Because you have to imagine there will be points where at 2 o'clock, you have one client, and at 3 o'clock, you have a different client.
Hmm.
And that switching from one project to another, everybody don't do that so well, right? And sometimes if you got three clients, you might have three back-to-back meetings with three different clients, hour after hour after hour. So you have to be prepared, ready for those things, ready to go. And for me, the only way you really can do that is through the things that we talked about here, but adding an additional thing to it and being really proactive about what you're doing, because it's going to help you really in spades when you do that. So think
You know,
about that and
there's
don't
been a lot of
overcommit yourself. Go ahead, Lee.
There's been a lot of studying done on that transitioning from job to job, and they say as much as 30% efficiency loss every time you move from one job to the next. So if you're doing that 2, 3 times a day, you better figure out how you're going to deal with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've run into that. I've done at most 4 clients at a time, and
Hmm.
it was not good for me.
Hmm.
Now I try to keep that to 2. I like when I have one. Sometimes, I'll just take the extra time. But the other
Hmm.
thing, there's a fine dance between being transparent with your client, because
Yeah.
although a client may say, I only need 50% availability, and you get in there and it's like 75, 80%, and now you've
Hmm.
already committed to someone else for that other
Hmm.
50%. So there's always a fine dance between being transparent and still making sure that each of your clients get what they need. So you have to think about that too when you're taking on. It may sound good. Oh, I can do 4 jobs. I can work, 60, 70, 80 hours a week, but really that can wear on you and it cannot be good for your clients either.
Well, and if I combine what both of you all said there, right? If you're working 50 hours a week on two clients and you're constantly switching back and forth and you lose 30% efficiency, right?
Hmm.
You're in a situation where you've lost 10 to 15 hours of efficiency between both of those clients. Most
Hmm.
of us, when we lose that time, that's taking us down to, let's say, 40 to really 35 hours of effective time. Do you really, really not make up that time by just working more hours? That's what you typically do. So you can really burn yourself out really quickly by doing things like that. And for me, I always set the expectation that the client is lying to themselves. That the client is saying they need me for 50%, but they really need me for 60%, right? I'm always
Hmm.
putting in a little bit of buffer so and then I can deal with their overshoots or them not being able to properly plan how I am supposed to work this effort. Because usually when you get into it, especially if it was an emergency situation you came in on, man, you don't know what's going on with that thing, and there's going to be all kinds of things that pop up and creep up. They're not usually bringing you in, especially for an emergency as a fractional project manager, do easy work. They're bringing you in for that tough stuff, that hard stuff. That's what they're doing. And so you want to make sure that you're prepared for that and that you set aside time for it. There's only so much time in a day. And let's just say you got a family too. And now you got to deal with that too. So there's lots of things that's going on here. Any other thoughts from either of you in terms of this?
One of the other things I see from the because I generally go in on the client side as opposed to the implementation partner or the technology side, and it can be very frustrating for the client.
Hmm.
Your big partners, they typically do put their PMs and all of their consultants on many multiple projects.
Hmm.
Then when things happen on your particular project, those folks are no longer are not available because they are on 3 or 4 other projects. So just
Hmm.
from a client perspective, that can be frustrating and it can impact the success of your project as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's really, really true. And really, we're there to meet some goal to get the project successfully done. And those kind of things can have a tremendous impact along with wear and tear on you in some kind of
Mhm.
way. So, Karen, I agree with that completely. Any other good recommendations you have for people that are handling multiple clients?
I think just be intentional about how many clients you take on and really take in consideration what's good for you, what's good for your family, and what's good for the client because you want to go in there and really do a good job. And if you're only giving them 25% of yourself, that may not make for a successful project implementation.
I agree with that because I think you should give 100% of yourself for the allotted time that you have available, right? And so if you got 20 hours, you give them 100% of yourself in that 20 hours, right? That's what you're doing for them because here's the deal. What I would add to what Karen just said is that start slow, man. Start slow. I'd
Mhm.
rather for you to ramp up the clients than have too many clients and have to and mess it all up because just remember something and remember this for real. It's your reputation, man. It's your
That's right.
reputation. And here's the deal. Companies talk, right? They
Oh, yeah.
talk. They talk, they talk, they talk. And if you get a bad reputation, you may miss out on some amazing opportunities because you messed up with a client 2 years ago. So you
Mhm.
want to be careful how much you take on from the very beginning. And for me, ramping up to that is better than going full blast. I think I'm going to take on 100 clients. And then if I mess up one, I'm good. No, you might mess up one of those clients that attend all of the PMI global conferences and talk to everybody, right? Now you suck because you're in a bad situation, right? They going over to everybody, pure, and everybody else saying this guy sucks over here, and you want to be careful about that, right? Because I know PMs that have some really bad reputations. Most of them was full-time employees, though. Hey,
Yeah,
tell
there's
me it's
one
not
other
true.
thing that we should mention here. I think that as a fractional PM, when you get a schedule from your client,
Yeah.
it's going to be a very optimistic schedule. I think
Yeah.
a fractional PM needs to have the courage to say, this is not real. You're expecting me to do this in this much time. I don't know. The
Yeah.
realism in this estimate is questionable. I think we owe it to the client to raise that flag.
Yeah. Yeah. There's
Absolutely.
something about integrity that's really important.
Yes.
And you know, I've been fired. I've been fired on my integrity. Like legitimately, you have us on a death march. Okay, we're not gonna make the date. I'm not gonna change the plan to make it look like we're gonna make the date, so you can actually look good, CIO, to the billionaire investor. That's just not gonna happen. I'm not gonna do it. So you can go ahead and walk me out the door, but I'm not gonna compromise my integrity at all. And so you have to know how far you're going to go seriously. And if you don't have the wherewithal to have that conversation, that transparent conversation about a schedule, about what you think is going to happen, about what people are telling you in terms of their work. Now, I understand that, people could be lying, like the resources is giving you dates and time frames, they could be lying. But, a lot of times we assume people are telling a fair amount of truth. And if they're not, the organization should deal with them in some kind of way. But beyond that, your integrity is at stake here. And if you're not willing to put that on a line, this may not be the right thing for you. Am I thinking
Mhm.
about that wrong, Karen?
And that's whether you're fractional or full time. You got to be willing to consult. That's why they brought you in. And I often get into those situations when I go in where immediately I know the timeline that they have set is not achievable. So
Hmm.
you don't want to get a reputation for being the always that I can't do person, but establishing a relationship and having a reputation that when you really give them that consultation, that they respect it and they respect your experience and can
Yeah.
pivot.
Here's a question for you, Karen, right? You've been a fractional PM. How many times have you walked in the door and the plan has been right?
Only if I develop the plan. How about
Because I'm with Lee on that, right? Most of the time you walk in and the plan that exists is off.
yeah,
It's off in some kind of way, right?
yeah.
And you have to deal with that. You have to deal with that realistically, right? There's a reason why they're bringing you in, and they will be optimistic about all the possibilities and everything that's going on there. And if they're not willing to really allow you to speak in truth to them, I'm not sure if you really want to stay there long term, right?
Yeah.
Now, and
No,
one of
I
the
think.
first things to ask and understand, when you see that kind of a plan is there something that's driving that? And in some cases there is. There could be a divestiture that's happening or something where that's the date.
Hmm.
It's not movable. And so
Yeah,
now you have to rework that plan so that you can figure out how to make that date because that date, is not optional.
agreed, agreed. And then there are some dates that are gonna stick. We know that. The
Mhm.
rest of these dates are just made up. The rest of them just made up, right? Some of them are resource balanced, but a lot of these
Right.
dates are just like, you know what? We're gonna get it done right here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so Lee, the next question will be yours, but here's what I want to tell everybody. Please, 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 if you have any questions, do us a favor, drop your questions in the comments. In about 5 to 10 minutes, we're gonna answer the questions that are out there. One or two, three, have any questions that we have there, and we'll spend some time on your question. But we'll do that in 5 to 10 minutes. So just go ahead and drop your questions in the comments, and we will take care of it from there. All right, Lee, you're the next one up to bat because this is an even number question right here. And that is this model sustainable long term or just a trend? What do you think, Lee?
What an, what an easy question. Uh, yeah, I think so.
All
Is
right.
it sustainable? I think it is sustainable. I
Yeah.
think that the difference in it being sustainable or not is the quality of the work that I get. If I
Hmm.
get fractional PMs that do their job, this will grow. It'll become more pronounced. If I start getting situations where you're fractional just because you like the freedom and the ability to come and go,
Hmm.
then it won't be sustainable. So I think it's really
Yeah.
going to depend on the quality of work that you get from the fractional PMs.
Yeah. Yeah. What are your thoughts, Karen?
It absolutely is sustainable, especially with all of the other things happening, in the organization and in our environment where we are so cost sensitive, and doing everything we can to, make our shareholders happy and that kind of thing. So this is a way that organizations, especially now that they've seen that it can be successful, I don't think there's any turning around or turning back on this. I think you're going to see it more and more and more often.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
and
do
I
too.
would say to you to add to that, I think it's a both. I think it's a trend that is becoming sustainable.
Mhm.
And as Karen said, I mean, you let the horses out of the barn at this point. Once COVID happened and technology had that big upshoot to really encourage people being able to work from any place. Prior to COVID, it just wasn't that way. But after COVID, it's just that way where people can work from any place on the planet. And I think as Lee said earlier, a PM is a PM is a PM. So crappy PMs are everywhere. Great PMs, that's a little different. So I think you'll
Mhm.
have
Yeah.
crappy fractional PMs and you'll have great PMs. And I think the difference is when you're, as an organization, going to do your search, you have to find the right folks to do the right job for you, right? And so you'll run into both situations. So I don't think that's going to stop anything. I just really think that we're at a place where we're in a gig economy. And with the advent of AI, right, taking routine activities and doing those for us, that's going to change the amount of work that PMs need to do over time, not getting rid of your exploratory, your brain, your thinking, your critical thinking that you have to do with being a project manager. So I don't know why, as a company, I don't know why I wouldn't want it to be here. As a individual out here that would want to be a fractional PM, I don't know why I wouldn't pursue that kind of work. So I think it's beneficial for both sides. And so it is a trend that will become more sustainable over time. And I really do think that it's just not going to become sustainable. It's going to be a preference for many organizations in the future, like legitimately. Am I
Well,
talking
uh,
wrong here?
think about the fact that this has been going on for a lot of years. All the big consulting firms, they've been doing this fractionalized stuff forever. It's
Right.
working for them. So
Hmm.
why wouldn't it work for us? I think when the consulting groups first started to do it, it was a cost issue. Then they
Hmm.
realized if it's less cost but still lousy work, that's not going to work. So they restructured to really focus on delivering quality. I don't see
Hmm.
why we can't do that everywhere.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
also allows an organization to invest where there's the most value. So, for
Hmm.
instance, looking at those roles where you need in depth business experience. And then for those other roles where, like a PM or some of the
Hmm.
other technical roles that you can come and go. So, most organizations that I go in now, it's a mix and they plan it that way. Have their long-term full-time roles, then they're going to have a mix of contingent workers, contractors, and consultants always.
Yeah.
Yeah, and organizations have to ramp up and ramp down as they need to based on what's happening with themselves financially, right? If you have $1 billion hit, then you need to get rid of some folks, right? If
Mhm.
you have a
Right.
surplus that's happening, you can get more things done to prepare for your future. So I think organizations always go in these ebbs and flows, and they will always have these waves. And based on those waves, when you're in a surplus, you go and you add more of these kind of people. When you're not in a
Right.
Sure.
surplus, you keep your full-time employees and have them muddle through whatever you need them to muddle through. So I don't see any reason why this would change whatsoever. So I think it's something that's going to be here for forever and ever and ever. And again, I don't see any reason for it to change at all because it's beneficial to both sides. So I think that trend is just becoming more sustainable. And I don't know how we would go about changing that at this particular point in time. Seriously, just it's just interesting, right? So that being said, we are at the point where we're at our final question, and then we will, answer this question, and then we'll go ahead and answer whatever questions that people have available to us and finalize the conversations that we need to have here. But odd number question, Karen. So it is, right? What mindset shift is required to thrive as a fractional PM? What do you think, Karen?
I think the biggest mind shift is really that you are in control of your destiny.
Hmm.
When you're a full time employee, you kind of can depend on, oh, they'll have my next assignment, or, I've got good benefits. They're going to
Hmm.
take care of me. But when you're a fractional PM or any consultant role, you're in control. And so you have to plan for, as you said, always looking for the next thing, building those networks, planning
Hmm.
for your own benefits. Yeah, you can make a lot of money, but it also costs a lot of money, because you're responsible for your technology
Hmm.
oftentimes. You're responsible for your own benefits. There's no
Hmm.
such thing as a 401k. If you don't save it yourself, you're not going to have it. So really that shift is I'm responsible. I am responsible.
Yeah, I agree with that. What do you think, Lee?
Well, I was going to say exactly the same thing that Karen said. She's
Hmm.
just brilliant. That's. I think that's the whole thing. If I accept the responsibility to do a job as fractionalized PM, then I, by golly, better do the best I can do. And I think that's going to make the difference.
Yeah, I agree. And I think Karen is amazing, right? I think we got a genius over here that needs to show up on this show sometimes in the future. We'll see if she wants to check us out in the future. But here's what I would add to that conversation. Um, I think it's really, I think the mindset for me that's an important one to have, because I see a lot of people get lost in a certain place. And one of the things that I learned over time is that corporations don't give a damn about you. Um, they really don't, right? And a corporation will preserve itself over everything else. And so one of the things that I've at least learned is that when I'm fractional, I'm in self-preservation mode. And I'm always in self-preservation mode. I'm going to do the right thing by the client, that's for sure. But what I'm not going to do is put myself in a position where I'm going to be taken advantage of if I possibly can. I'm going to put myself in a position where I'm surprised by what's going to be the outcome of my work here. So I know that I can be let go of at any time. I know that I need to be prepared for the moment when that happens. If you're really good at what you do, you might go and deliver that effort in half the time, like Lee did, right? And if you deliver that effort in half the time, like Lee did, normally they don't pay fractional project managers by the project. They pay them by the hour. You
Right.
understand? And so realistically, you are cutting your pay in half because you delivered early when you want to deliver early, when you want to do great things by the client, right? But it is not in your best interest. That's the reason why these big firms, I love them, but they know how to be in people's pockets forever, forever.
Mhm.
right? And if you're going to do a great job and doing a great job that you're doing, you one of those amazing people, you delivering half the time. Now you got half the job. Now you gotta be searching much sooner than you were before. So for me, there is a self-preservation thing that you learn to gain. So and then you know how to survive in this dog eat dog world. And to be serious, when you are out there and you have no safety net, it's a different place to be. And usually, organizations fire the contractors first. So
Yep.
unless your effort is really, really important as a fractional PM, you're likely going to be gone before everybody else, right? And you have to be prepared for that. And I've had many a contracts over my time where it's a 6 month contract, I'm done in 3. At this point, I don't even expect to be done in 6. I expect to be done in 3. You understand? I just do
Yep.
because here's the deal. Here's another truthful fact, right? Because one thing about me is if I'm there beyond my useful time and I'm bored, guess what I do? Man, I quit. Like I need to go work for somebody else because I'm not learning anymore. So you got to learn how to preserve yourself because one of the things that I recognize is no matter what company I go to, I run into good and bad people. But I always love the good people I work with, and I never want to leave them. And those connections are really important, and you want to keep them. But I got to let you go because I need to go work for someone else and do something different because I can't stay here forever, right? And so there's this emotional tie that typically happens. And so you want to make sure that you keep that in check and you preserve that so you don't get taken advantage of. That's probably the best thing that I can tell you. I know you've experienced this, Karen. I'm not the only one. So what are your thoughts on what I just said? Am I crazy?
Not at all. And one of the things you said just kind of reminded me of something because I get separation issues because I get
Yeah.
so engaged with my clients.
Yeah.
And one of the shifts, we talked about being fractional and, but there's another part where you really get engaged such that your clients really don't think of you as a contractor. They just think of you as a member of their team.
Yep.
Um, Generally, when I leave, I have to remind them. I had to do that today. Hey guys, I'm gonna be rolling off in a few weeks, and they're like,
Hmm.
"Where are you going?" And I'm like, "I'm not an employee. I'm here for the." So keep building those kinds of relationships with
Mhm,
your clients, such that they really don't think of you as a contractor per se, but just
mhm,
a member of their team. And when you've done that, I think that's successful for them in both ways. They get the benefits of you being that fractional PM, but they
mhm.
also get the benefit of you being a close member of their team, and that just works best for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with that. And here's the deal. We got just a little bit of time here, so we got a couple questions. So I want to make sure I kind of jump out with the first question, and I'll throw it at Lee. I think we answered this a little bit, but here we go with this question right here. How would you recommend getting started on a path of becoming a fractional project manager? I think we answered to some degree, but you want to kind of repeat that for her here?
Yeah, I think that when you decide you want to be a fractional project manager, you start
Hmm.
to act that way. You start to learn. I was going to add this to the mindset discussion. I think we
Hmm.
have to have the mindset of lifetime learner. I
Hmm.
think if you don't, the technology passes you by. So whether you're a
Hmm.
fractional or whether you're on in-house, you need to keep that available. So when I was working in General Electric, I just looked for opportunities to do things I'd really never done before,
Hmm.
anticipating doing my own later on. So I think you have to do this. Doesn't happen accident. I've read these books, Accidental Project Manager. Sounds good when you say it fast, but there's no plan for these kinds of things. And I think that that's the best way to do it. And plan early. Don't
Yeah.
wait till you've been there 10 years. Start
Hmm.
planning. You decide that might be what you want to do.
Any thoughts on that, Karen?
I agree. The planning, don't just jump out there. Start now, looking at some of the sites, looking at the kinds of jobs that are available, the kinds of things that businesses are asking for in those fractional type roles, contract roles, and really doing your research around, is this something that I would enjoy doing? And if you look at those, you'll see the types where it may say 6 months or three
Hmm.
months, or, if you're on some of the large ones, it could go 2 to 3 years. So do your research, look at what's out there, and then start to formulate your plan around what you might enjoy most and where you might be the most successful.
Okay. All right. Great, great answer. I got another question here, and this will probably be our last question, but I'll throw it at you, Karen. This is from David. Do fractional PMs typically earn a higher contract rate? What do you think about that, Karen?
The rate really depends on the skill set, what they're asking for. From a
Hmm.
PM standpoint, um, yes, I think the rates are higher. But if you're coming in from like a consulting firm or a sourcing firm, those rates are going to be high because there's overhead for those companies. So
Hmm.
you may be working alongside a PM that's coming in from one of the big consulting firms, and you're working right alongside them, and their rate is maybe twice yours, but that's not what that person is getting. That's what that company is getting.
Yeah.
But yes, you can draw some pretty good rates, but just keep in mind they're not going to be what you might see some of the firms advertising.
Yeah, absolutely. Any thoughts on that, Lee?
Well, I think the part of the problem is the younger people look at how much the older people are making and they think that's what they should be making.
Mm,
And so people get you. You got to be realistic about what you're expecting as compensation for what you deliver. If you don't
mm-hmm.
have the goods, you aren't going to get paid for the goods. So it's going
Mm-hmm.
to take you time to develop into that. So I think there's a role for young fractional PMs. I have to definitely do, but it's going to take you a while before you get to that exorbitant rate that some of these folks are getting.
I agree
There's
with you.
also a watch out that I would call out there too, because a lot of times I see, Devon, you were talking about AI, and AI is
Mm-hmm.
definitely starting to be used in the recruiting space. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
times you'll see these jobs advertising where they want all these skills and all these certifications and all these
Mm-hmm.
educations, and they want to pay $40 an hour.
Mm-hmm.
So you really have to be, you have to, have the confidence in yourself, know what your worth is, and really, fetch out what is the right job for you. You're not always going to get the rate you may think you deserve, but certainly you don't want to sacrifice and, take something that's not going to meet your needs.
Okay, great. So here's the deal. I think we've had an amazing conversation here. And there's one thing I must mention here. We have a winner of our 30-minute brand and land session, right? So here we go. Here's our winner. We'll reach out to you, Shamagan. We'll reach out to you and let you know how to schedule that. But other than that, I am going to ask some final questions here. And I'm going to ask you what you got going on. So I'm going to start off with Lee. What do you got going on, Lee, that you want to tell everybody about?
I'm still doing what I've been doing for 2 years. I just go around the world telling people how great project management is. So I'm heading off to my next trip is Dubai, then Riyadh, and then Rome. So
Oh, wow.
I'll try to do my best for you guys, so you don't feel bad. But that's what I do. After when you get to be almost 80 years old, yeah, talking is about all you can do.
Yeah, well, hey, I'm trying to be like you one day, Lee. Those are facts, right? That was very, very true. So, Karen, what do you have going on?
I am actually in the middle of a go live. I currently in the middle of a workday implementation for a global organization. I have a go live on May 26th. So I'm working, when you're doing those kind, you typically work sometimes around the clock. And so I
Well,
I'm glad I took this break.
I'm glad you took it too. And I must say, that chair makes you look like you're a judge. So you scared me a little bit there, Karen. You really scared me. That whole background makes you look all judgy and everything else. So I'm not sure. I was a little bit concerned about having you on, but you did an amazing job. And everybody, here's the deal. I'm just working on my PhD, working to get toward that dissertation. So you'll hear more about all that stuff later. But on that note, I'm going to say from myself and our panelists here, this was a wonderful discussion. Hopefully, you got some value out of it. And you know what? We will see you all next month. I don't remember what the topic is. Do you remember what the topic is, Lee, for next month?
Yeah, the five uses of AI. The five most critical uses of
The
AI.
five most critical uses of AI is what we'll be talking about next month. So, Karen, we'd love to have you back with us for sure. So make sure you keep the bat phone available. You don't give us any court cases or anything like that. That would be amazing. Other than that, thank you all. This was wonderful and great. And we will see everybody next month, next Tuesday, 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Eastern is when we'll be live. Thank you all. You have a good one.
Thank
Thanks,
you. Good
everyone.
night.
Good night. Bye bye.